Today's scripture reading is from 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 to 12, and verses 19 and 20. You know, brothers and sisters, that our visit to you was not without results. We had previously suffered and been treated outrageously in Philippi, as you know, but with the help of our God, we dared to tell you his gospel in the face of strong opposition. For the appeal we make does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you. On the contrary, we speak as those approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel. We are not trying to please people, but God, who tests our hearts. You know we never use flattery, nor did we put on a mask to cover up greed. God is our witness. We were not looking for praise from people, not from you or anyone else, even though as apostles of Christ, we could have asserted our authority. Instead, we were like young children among you. Just as a nursing mother cares for her children, so we cared for you. Because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. Surely you remember, brothers and sisters, our toil and hardship. We worked night and day in order not to be a burden to anyone while we preached the gospel of God to you. You are witnesses, and so is God, of how holy, righteous, and blameless we were among you who believed. For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom and glory. For what is our hope, our joy, or the crown in which we will glory in the presence of our Lord Jesus when he comes? Is it not you? Indeed, you are our glory and joy. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. You may be seated, everyone. All right. Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Drew. I'm one of the pastors here. And we've actually been in this message series called Counterformed. Can I hear you say counterformed? That's right. What does it mean for us to be formed instead of the ways that most New Yorkers are formed by, either through media or through social media or through just the culture and spirit of this city? What does it mean for us to actually listen to a different voice, to actually go to kind of move and dance according to a different rhythm, specifically the rhythm of Jesus? And how does that so different than the ways of the world? And so we've been exploring these various different themes of what does it mean for us to live out of a certain kind of belovedness? What does it mean for us to live out of spaciousness? And so on and so forth. And today we're talking about this idea of being people first. Can I hear you say people first? Right now, you might wonder, like, what in the world are we talking about when we talk about people first? Well, we're talking about this idea of kind of how each person made in the image of God, how there's an orientation then to live out the Christian life, that relationships really, really do matter. Now, some of you might be like, duh, of course relationships matter. Well, the reality is in the city that we live in the culture that we live in, so much can be emphasized. Results might matter more. Mission might matter more. Getting things done might matter more than how you treat people and that sort of thing. But what we're actually going to see is how Christians actually have a unique point of view, especially on the value and the dignity of people. And we actually see this first from the letter of Paul. And Paul is actually writing this letter. Paul was someone who had this dramatic conversion into Christian faith. And he's the one that actually started these different churches in different areas of Asia Minor and within the Roman Empire. And so he's actually writing this letter to the church in Thessalonica, which was this city that was kind of the capital of Macedonia in the Roman Empire during the first century. Now, Paul is writing this letter, and notice what he's doing. He's writing this letter to a small group of Christians that exist within the city that he helped start this church community. And he's trying to encourage them, but he's also trying to give them a case for kind of what his main aim was, what his main purpose was in starting this church and being a resource for them. So check this out. This is what it says. It says, you know, brothers and sisters, that our visit to you was not without results. Now he's talking about, again, his visit along with others in starting this movement. And he basically says, we had previously suffered and been treated outrageously in Philippi. Now, he's going to speak in a moment about what this outrageous treatment may have looked like. As you know, but with the help of our God, we dared to tell you this gospel in the face of strong opposition. Now, what was the outrageousness that was happening, and what's the strong opposition? Essentially, the Christianity was a small little movement. I mean, people thought they were heretics. They were crazy. Who in the world are they? They're following this Jewish Messiah, this nameless, faceless person. Yeah, it's a nothing group. Who in the world are you? And so as a result, this small minority group ended up getting oppressed and persecuted in various different ways. And so Paul is basically making the case, listen, we went, and even in the face of persecution and opposition and outrageous behavior that we would have to go through, we actually continued to share the gospel. For the appeal we make does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you. On the contrary, we speak as those approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel. Gospel means good news or the message of Jesus. We are not trying to please people, but God who tests our hearts. So he's making the case of why he came to the church, what his life calling is to basically tell the good news of Jesus in the face of persecution. Now notice what he writes. You know, we never use flattery, nor did we put on a mask to cover up greed. God is our witness. We were not looking for praise from people. I mean, we were being persecuted, not from you or anyone else. Even though as apostles of Christ, we could have asserted our authority, told you, hey, we witnessed the resurrected Jesus, but we didn't do that. Sorry, I'm adding some words here. Instead, we were like young children among you. Now, notice what he's going to write to this group. He basically says, just as a nursing mother cares for her children, so we cared for you. What an image, right? So he's giving this case for why he did what he did in Thessalonica. Then he goes to this image of like a nursing mother cares for a child because we loved you so much. We were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. Surely you remember, brothers and sisters, our toil and hardship. We worked night and day in order not to be a burden to anyone while we preach the gospel of God to you. You are witnesses, and so is God, of how holy, righteous, and blameless we were among you who believed. We were trying to do the right thing. We were trying to live with integrity. Now notice, for you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God. Did you notice that? So first, there was the metaphor of as a mother who cares for the children that they're nursing, or the babies. And now there's this metaphor of a father who deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you, who calls you into his kingdom and glory. For what is our hope? What's our joy? Or the crown in which we will glory in the presence of our Lord Jesus when he comes? What's our joy? Is it that we're going to make a whole lot of money? That we're going to accumulate all these assets? That our 401k is going to be incredibly impressive? Again, I'm adding words because that's clearly not what he says. Look at what he says. What is our glory in the presence of the Lord when he comes? Is it not you? Indeed, you are our glory and our joy. See, what Paul is basically saying is, he's basically saying, you, the people, like you all that we know, that I spent time with, you are our glory and joy. And when I think about my life and the sum of my life and everything that I've achieved, yes, things may amass and results may have come of it, but at the end of the day, people matter greatly. And you all, your names matter greatly to me. And he actually uses this image, right? He doesn't use the image of like, didn't I come to you as your bishop, as your leader, to tell you exactly what you're supposed to do? You know, he doesn't use that language. Or he doesn't use it, hey, didn't I come to you as like your pal who's just here to kind of cheer you on? No, he doesn't use that language. He uses the language of, I came to you like as a mother who cares for a child that they're nursing. I came to you as a father who cares, who's encouraging you, and also wants what's best for you. Now, in my own life journey, if you know anything about the history of Hope Church, we actually started this church in 2012. The original Hope Church is actually in Astoria, Queens. And it's still there, it's thriving. That was the first one. Hope Midtown, actually, this church started in 2015, and it was the third church that we had started. So we were starting these new church communities in different places. And one of the reasons why we started the church this way was instead of building a giant crowd of people, we wanted to start these local communities where people could get to know one another and where discipleship could happen and people could be introduced to Jesus, but not in such an kind of an overwhelming kind of crowd, but that instead that it could really be like a community. And so when we started Hope Midtown and all these different communities, so you could imagine, now I was the founder of this community along with my wife, and so what we would do is we would raise up leaders, and then we would send out these leaders with a group of people to start new churches in different neighborhoods. So that's how Hope Westside started. That's how Hope East Village started. Some of you may or may not know there's a Hope Jersey City. There's a Hope Roosevelt Island that changed its name to Mosaic Roosevelt Island. There's a Hope Long Island that changed its name to Edge City. There's all these Hope churches, Hope Brooklyn, and other places that we started these new churches. Now, as we're starting these new churches, my task then was I would constantly be pouring into these leaders, and then we would send them with a group of people to start a church in a different neighborhood. Now, one of the things that's so kind of ironic about that is like, I don't necessarily see myself as like a take charge kind of leader. I grew up as the youngest of four. In the Enneagram, if you're familiar with that profile, I'm actually a 2, which is a helper. So I'm much more, instead of like a take charge kind of leader, I'm more of like a, hey, what do you like to do? Yeah, let's go where you want to go. Yeah, let me see if I can help you. Like that's usually my disposition. And so because it's my disposition, like here I was then leading a group of people, like raising up people to lead. But it was really hard for me because I would find myself falling into one of two poles. Basically, one extreme was basically I'd start like being like, man, I gotta be a better leader. I gotta be like a take charge kind of leader. So then I would basically be like, I gotta be like a CEO type of leader. Guys, this is where we're going. Men and women, this is what we need, right? But then I felt like such an imposter, you know? I'm like, wait, and then, I'd be like, guys, this is what we need to do for our movement of churches. And someone would be like, actually, I disagree with that. I think we should do, and I'm like, you're right. I'm sorry, man. So I would constantly find myself, and then I'd feel like ashamed of myself, like I'm not a good leader, like I'm not really pressing forward. And so I realized there was this CEO kind of disposition that I thought I needed to have. Or I would fall under this other kind of polarity, and it was basically this other extreme where I was like, you know what? I'm not a leader. I'm just everyone's friend. I'm just here to cheer everyone on. That's kind of my name. That's my game. I'm just everyone's friend. And I realized, though, that when I would try to be everyone's friend, I turned into a coward. I wouldn't speak hard truth. I wouldn't give feedback where I thought it was helpful or necessary. And I realized that the scriptural kind of example, though, of what kind of leadership looks like, and the Apostle Paul brings it up here. Notice he doesn't say, I came to you as a CEO, as someone who's got like such vision and incredible strategy, and I didn't come to you as like your buddy on the side. He actually uses this image. He says, I came to you as like a spiritual father and mother. And for anyone who's a parent in the room, you know kind of the heart of a parent. A heart of a parent is one that a parent wants to, of course, they want to nurture and applaud and cheer for and get behind and support. But at the same time, a parent also wants to instruct and help and challenge where necessary. Now, the reality is when it comes to parenting, and for those of you who are parents in the room, one of the biggest challenges is, when do I prod and challenge, and when do I encourage and support? That's one of the most difficult things to navigate. But a spiritual parent, though, the key is the heart and the disposition is always one of love. And I realized that kind of the perspective that I needed was, instead of being a friend who was a coward or a CEO who was so invested in mission but not invested in people and love and care for them, I started to realize, especially in scriptures like this, that what does it look like to be a spiritual father? Someone who cares deeply but is willing to give feedback where necessary. What does it look like for me to actually live into that? Now, part of that disposition, and here's the reality, in a city like ours, so much of the emphasis is the CEO type of leadership. So much of it is on getting results. Are we going up and to the right? Hey, do we need to do a performance review? Because we need to make sure you're hitting your metrics. And yet, the scriptures, now, what's interesting about this passage is Paul actually writes about the results. It's not like scripture's against metrics or performance. Instead, it's for metrics and performance, but it's in light of being people first, of having this perspective that people really matter. And so with God, people matter greatly. High five your neighbor and say, with God, people matter greatly. I know, a lot to remember, but you could have read it on the screen. Now, here's what's interesting. Like, check this out. Like, here's a passage in Luke chapter 6, in the life of Jesus. Look at Jesus. Look at the model of Jesus. It says, one of those days, Jesus went to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. So there's something really important to Jesus here. He's spending the entire night just prayerfully, thinking, praying, listening, praying to God. And notice what it says, God the Father. And it says, when morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, whom he also designated as apostles. So he spent the whole night praying. What was he praying about? He's praying about people, specific people. And notice what it says. It says his brother Simon, whom he named Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Simon, who was called the Zealot, Judas, son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who would later betray him. Now, here's what's interesting. Like, each one of these names, Jesus wasn't praying for, God, I pray that millions would come and hear me preach and witness these miracles. No, his prayer is for actual people. And here are the receipts. Here are their names. He knows each one of their names. And he actually shows us this disposition of investing in the names of people. Now, have you ever noticed that the scriptures are actually full of names in the Old Testament and the New Testament? In the ancient world, whenever people would hear these genealogies, today most people read these genealogies and they're just like, let me just skip this part. Not relevant to me. But actually in the ancient days, these words, these names actually had significant meaning because each name represented a family, a story, a history. And they still do. So could you imagine? So this is what Jesus is praying about. He spends all night praying. What he's doing is he's praying for each of these people. I pray for Simon Peter. I pray for Andrew. I pray for Thomas. I pray for James and John and Judas, son of James. And he's praying, thinking of each person, thinking about who he's going to call and invite into this journey with him. He even prays about Judas Iscariot, who's going to betray him. Even someone who he'd be investing time and energy into. I would be like, God, I pray for this person. But Judas, there's something off about him. He's going to betray me. That might be just a waste of my time. Isn't that the kind of language we would use to optimize kind of people and that sort of thing? And yet here Jesus is just praying overnight for specific names and people. And here's what's incredible, is that in the life of Jesus, it's recorded that 40 different kind of private conversations he has with his disciples. And even amongst the 12, there's 3 that he even spent even more time with. But there's only 17 accounts of larger group settings where he's preaching these like sermons or basically feeding 5,000 in large crowds. Now, what does this reveal? What it reveals is that Jesus spent most of his time with the few, not with the many. In fact, his orientation, that he knew that the best kind of use of his time and energy was to actually invest in people, in the few. Now, did movements start out of this? Were there great crowds that would follow him and be fed and whatever? Yes, of course. But disproportionately, the way that Jesus started this movement was to invest in a few. Now, for most of us, this is kind of what we think, even when it comes to church life. If we look at this graphic, if you look at the graphic here on the left, when it comes to modern day discipleship, or even just the way that we would think of starting movements, we think, you got to go big at first. Go big or go home. Right? Start on social media, build a platform. Once you've built that platform and gained a certain amount of influence. But isn't it interesting, right? Like most, even churches think this way. Like, let's just build a big crowd. And then maybe there would just be a few people who change the world. See, but Jesus' model was he starts small. He starts with the few, with names of people that he's prayerfully considering, investing in these people, in this community that he will sow his life into. And it's through that transformation of the world happens. And the invitation for any one of us is, what does it look like for us to invest in this way? Jesus spent most of his time with the few and not the many. Now, I recognize some of you are like, oh my goodness, this sounds overwhelming to me. Because who am I going to invest in? And what does this mean? Does it mean I have to be friends with everyone? Does it mean I have to be Mr. or Mrs. Extrovert with everyone? Well, first, let me say, being people first does not mean the following, okay? It does not mean I have to be an extrovert. Introverts, can you raise, actually you don't have to raise your hand because you probably don't want to, right? Like introverts, listen, this is a relief. You don't have to be an extrovert, okay, to be people first. Again, it's about how your orientation to the few, how are you living with those key relationships? Or it doesn't mean I have to like everyone. Now, some of you are like, phew, okay, good, because there's people here I don't like. Yeah, I don't have to like everyone. You don't have to like everyone. It just means, again, that for the few, there's an orientation where the people really matter that are close to you. Now, I have to be friends with everyone. And it doesn't mean I have to be friendly with everyone. It doesn't mean I have to forfeit being results-oriented. Again, the scriptures also talk about mission and progress. So it doesn't mean we forfeit all of these things, and it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to like me. I mean, Jesus actually lived his life, and he was invested in the few, and yes, he was in crowds, and there was clearly results. We're in this room because Jesus decided to invest in a few, and not everyone liked him. So being people first doesn't mean any of these things. Well, what does it mean then? It means that we're actually going to be invested in the few people that God has called us to invest in. Now, again, it could be overwhelming, but there's a phrase that we've used here at our church before. We talk about this phrase a lot. Pastor Andy Stanley in Atlanta, he says this: do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Do for one person what you wish you could do for everyone. You don't have to lead mass movements. You don't have to have a massive following. Some of us, your trajectory may be there, but what does it look like for you at the end of the day to actually be focused, people-focused, on the few that God has called you to? Whether it's the 12, and even the 70. What does it mean for you to do for one what you wish you could do for everyone? There's an organization that our church helped start called Do for One, which we regularly support. It's an organization that matches people with physical and mental disabilities with friends of theirs who have similar interests. And it's a way of actually creating friendship relationships of people to be able to be matched with one another and to find each other so that they can actually enjoy life-giving things together. It's a beautiful kind of organization that we're so proud to support. And it's actually based on this phrase: do for one person what you wish you could do for everyone. So I recognize some of us might be so overwhelmed, like, what does it mean to be people first? What do you mean? Does it mean I have to stand at the door and greet everyone? No, leave that to Ethan Chow, everyone. Ethan, so thankful for you, and yes. But what does it mean for all of us, though, to actually be people first and to think about that? You know what's interesting is that I was reading these studies on kind of like the biggest regrets that people have when they're closer to their death. And studies have been done, research has been done for folks, for instance, who conducted these studies when it came to hospice care. And one of the biggest regrets that people have at the end of their life is that they didn't work more. I'm just kidding. No, you know that's not true, right? No way. Now, here's the thing. All of us know intuitively. We're like, no. I know we're in New York, but most of us know intuitively, yeah, that's not one of the biggest regrets in life. The biggest regrets happen to be people-oriented. I wish I didn't spend time with my friends and family, more time. I wish I didn't work more and instead invested that time and energy and hours into my relationships. I mean, all of us know this intuitively, and the question is, will you make this resolve then when it comes to people? To actually have those people come first. Now, does this mean that you get rid of results and mission? No, again, it works hand in hand. So for me, right now, whether you're married or you're single, what does it look like for you to invest in the relationships, the key relationships that God has called you to invest in? One of the reasons why, as a church, it's so important to get involved in communities and groups, go to rooftop hangouts and hang out at retreats that we have coming up, as well as to get involved in a community and use your gifts to serve others. All of this is kind of trying to build out a people orientation, especially in a city where so much of it is around money, the bottom line, buying great things, living in great places, and there's nothing wrong with that in and of themselves. But when those things take a front seat to actually this value of being people first, we end up losing out on the mission of Jesus and the invitation that people really do matter. and they matter greatly. And even in the life of Jesus, he's someone who's investing. And who are those relationships? And how can we begin to reprioritize so that people mattering greatly begins to matter to us? Now, David Benner, who he wrote this book called Soulful Spirituality. David Benner is a psychologist as well as a spiritual director who writes so many wonderful things about prayer and relationships. And David Benner, in this book, Soulful Spirituality, the book is about what does it mean for us to be present with people? Like when we're with people, what does it mean for us to be with them? Well, first, it comes from this withness that we have with God, experiencing a presence with God. And then, what does it look like for us when it comes to the relationships that we're in, to actually be people first in our orientation and in our presence with people? And he asked these 3 diagnostic questions. And here's the first diagnostic question is, am I fully present or am I distracted? When I'm with people, am I fully present or am I distracted? Now, here's the thing. Most of us in our devices today, it's so easy to be distracted with one another. It's so easy to like overlook people, to constantly be talking to people like, yeah, I'm sorry, what'd you say? You know? I mean, but we're so glued to our screen. But what does it mean for me to actually be fully present with people instead of distracted? Now, listen, if you've ever greeted me outside the church, I'm sorry. Because listen, you know I can be pretty distractible. And I want to say hi to everyone and talk to everyone and greet everyone at the door and know their names and figure out their names and all that stuff. And I realize this is an invitation for me. Here I am as a pastor, and I still am learning and thinking about how can I be fully present with people. This past Thursday, we kicked off our Emotionally Healthy Relationships course, which is one of our central discipleship courses at our church. And, we're preparing for it. We have a leaders meeting at 7 o'clock p.m., and my wife and I are both getting ready to lead a group within the Emotionally Healthy Relationships course. We've got a number of people taking it from all 3 of our locations. So I'm locked in, right? I'm set, like I'm getting ready for what we're going to talk about, getting ready for different illustrations, praying over the list of names there. And my wife, it's like the leaders meeting's like at 7 p.m., but my wife comes over to me at around 6:40 p.m. After we finished dinner, our family had dinner, she comes up to me, she's like, hey, can I tell you what happened at the new parent reception that just happened at the school? And I was like, right now? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So then she starts talking to me, and and I put down my things, and you got to keep in mind, I'm thinking like this whole course is on like how to be present with people, like how to say things, how to listen, and how to speak the truth in love, and how to live out Ephesians 4 and live out the Jesus way in relationship. So this whole time I'm just basically like, okay, I got to practice this right now with my wife. But it's 6:40, and she's like, well, you know how we've been talking a lot about when we first got married, and we're talking about like meeting people in these different areas. And meanwhile, I was like, yeah, okay, I remember that, yeah. And then she goes, well, I was meeting all these people, and this person, I met this person. Oh my goodness, I met this person. They're connected to us through this. And I was like, oh yeah, that's amazing. And then meanwhile, I'm like, okay, get to the point. I didn't say anything, but I'm just kind of there. And then finally, she's just basically, well, let me tell you, like, then I start talking to this one person, and then right when she says that, I was like, Tina, just spit it out. Just get to the point. Just get to the point. And Tina was like, fine, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And I was like, oh, let me get back to preparing for our Emotionally Healthy Relationships course on how to stay present with people. So later, I had to apologize. Been like, hey, honey, I'm really sorry. I was really anxious about our first night with Emotionally Healthy Relationships. So listen, I have a hard time myself being present. But one of the beautiful things about Jesus is how present he was with the few. How he noticed them, and he saw them, and he spoke to them. There's a beautiful book by a Japanese theologian named, the name escapes me right now, but it's called 3 Mile Per Hour Jesus. And it's about how Jesus, think about it, he started a movement that would change the world. Jesus starts this movement, but he just walking everywhere, unhurried. Fully present. Now just think today, we think, oh man, to scale whatever I'm doing or to grow my business, this is what I have to do and get engaged in. And, I need caffeine, more caffeine. Sorry, I don't know where that came from, but right? Like there's this hyperactive manner that we carry. And Jesus was someone, though, just so present, not distracted. Number 2, question is, am I loving or judging? When people experience me, do they experience a loving presence or do they experience a judging presence? What's interesting is that Jesus, his moniker was friend of sinners. He had such a loving presence and countenance about him. People experience him. Now, again, some of us might be like, oh, what if you compromise? And yeah, like, we're not talking about compromising here. We're talking about having a judgmental spirit versus having a loving countenance and disposition. And he asked this question, when I'm with people, with the few, am I loving or am I judging? And number 3, am I open or closed to being changed? Now, this is a question that really gets at our curiosity of being open to people and hearing what they have to say. Am I open to being changed? Now, some of us, again, we might be like, oh my goodness, what do you mean you changed? Then you'll compromise. And it's like, no, this is not about compromise. This is just with a curiosity and an openness to learn, especially from the people that we're around. Now, Benner, when he talks about this idea of presence with people, these are questions to ask us when it comes to people that we're around. I mean, here's a task. Maybe if you're married, you take this to your spouse and you're basically like, hey, can I ask you, do you think I'm fully present or distracted? Do you think I'm loving or judging? Do you think I'm open or close to being changed? Good questions. I mean, questions to ask your close friends or your family. And just think about the presence that you carry. Now, to be people first means that when we're in relationship, then we're present with them and we're eager to learn and we're open and we embody a safe kind of connectional presence. The reason why we have an 8-week course on emotionally healthy relationships is so that we could become one with God, but we can learn how to really connect with people in ways that would be honoring to God. And this is where the emotionally healthy relationships course comes from. Now, here's the thing, though. Did you ever notice in the Great Commandment, Jesus says what? He says, love your neighbor. First, he says, love the Lord your God with everything that you have. And then he says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Isn't that interesting? He says, I want you to love people as you love yourself. I remember being around a couple as I was counseling them, and the spouse said, listen, the way my husband treats himself, I don't want him to love me like that. And the reason why she was saying this was because she noticed that he was so harsh towards himself, so mean, did not take care of himself. And she was like, do not love me that way. I want you to spoil me. I don't want you to, to hurt yourself. And now, at the end of the day, the only way that we can fully be present with people, I mean, if you think about it, the only way we can be present is if somehow in our own soul, the only way I can be a loving presence is if in my own soul, I don't feel judged. The only way that I can be someone who's open and curious and loving and warm is it's only if I myself have embodied that myself. It's only when I've experienced that can I give that away. I can't give something that I do not possess. Now, here's the Christian story. And this is what's so unique about Christianity. See, all other systems of the world says, you know what, the way that you become a better person is you need to basically pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure out how to become a loving person by yourself, right? Like the self-actualization method. Or there's the method of like, you know what, you just need to listen to your parents or to the culture around you, and then you'll be better by listening to all these other voices around you. The community, kind of like the community will then shape you. Now, is it true that sometimes I need to look within myself? Yes, absolutely. Is it true that I need to listen to the voice of others? Absolutely. We talked about that last week when it comes to discernment. See, but at the end of the day, here's what a Christian believes. A Christian believes that my deepest sense of self, my deepest sense of lovability, my deepest sense of being fully present is found not from other people, not from myself. It's found from God. A God who, when I can trust in this God who loves me and died for me. And when I find my fullest sense of self, when I find the beloved kind of call of being a child of God, a son or a daughter of God, That's what actually unlocks everything. Because when I myself have experienced the love of God, it says we love, why? Because he first loved us. When we receive God's love, it's the only way that we can give it away. Now, but here's the thing. For us to actually receive the love, many of us, we receive love from how well we do at work, from the achievement that we do, and how much better we are at these people at performing or at school or at whatever else. And so we end up deriving our sense of lovability and loveliness from all sorts of other things. But yet, see, the Christian message is like, no, don't you see? You can find your deepest sense of lovability, satisfaction, peace, that everything that you carry in life, you can find it deeply in a God who is unchanging, who loves you, and who sent his son to die for you. Now, remember this image that Paul talked about, where he talks about like a nursing mother who cares for his child. That's how I long and I pine for you. See, this was simply an echo to notice. Look at this passage in the Old Testament scriptures in the book of Isaiah. Look at what it says. This is God speaking over his people. And he says, can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? It's a rhetorical question. Of course not. A mother stares with the interior gaze into the eyes of a child at her breast, and there's something incredibly bonding in that moment. But notice what it says. Though she may forget, you and I know how difficult and impossible that is. But you know what? Even if she forgets, even if a nursing mom would forget, look at what it says about God. God says, I will not forget you. I know your name. I won't forget you. And he gives this image. He says, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. You know, I remember being asked one time about getting a tattoo. Someone asked me about getting a tattoo, and it was a young person. They were asking me about different types of tattoos and what they should get and stuff. And talking about different names of people that they love. And just like, I was like, it's a big moment. If you're going to tattoo a name, listen, just got to be careful whose name that is. Like, this is, I don't know, it's kind of a permanent thing, like you just want to just be careful with these names, and like part of me is just kind of like, listen, I know relationships can be so fickle. Just don't put a name of someone that you're going to regret, And I was just thinking about that, and like, here's God. He's like, I'm not going to forget you. In fact, if you've ever thought if you ever doubted whether I knew you and your life and your heart, he's like, I've got you engraved on the palm of my hands. I'm not going to forget you. I know your name. I know your story. I know what you're going through. And I love you. I got you. And even if I were to forget, guess what? You're engraved on the palm of my hands. I just look at the palm of my hands, and there your name is. In a city like ours, it's so easy to feel overlooked, forgotten. What does it mean that the God of the universe, you can find your deepest sense of lovability in this God, a God who's got your name engraved, palm of his hand. He knows your name. He doesn't forget your name. Doesn't misremember you. This God has you engraved on the palm of his hands. Whatever you might be carrying, whatever prayers might have felt unanswered, whatever grief or sorrow or joy you might be carrying, we love because he first loved us. He knows your name.